Senior Bowl practice starts on Monday. Let's talk about the players you should watch for over the next week. All right, the NFL season is wrapping up. The Steelers season is over, but that means it's time for draft season. And the first event of draft season is, of course, the Senior Bowl. A big week for college prospects, a chance to show off their skill set in a week of practices with NFL coaches and scouts in attendance from around the league. So let's not forget, last year, Chase Claypool had a huge Senior Bowl week. And, of course, he was the Steelers' second-round choice from a year ago, and he had such a big impact on this team in the 2020 season. So I have 5 position groups here to watch for and some players to watch at each position. Let's start with the quarterback room. Look, the Steelers may go into this draft needing a quarterback. We don't have clarity yet on what Ben Roethlisberger is going to do. He may retire, and if he does, I think that certainly elevates this position. But even if he doesn't, I think the Steelers could still, at 24, if someone were to drop to them that they like, could still take a quarterback at that spot. When I look at the quarterbacks in attendance at the Senior Bowl, look, there's 5 guys here I think are intriguing for different reasons. And let's start with Sam Ehlinger from Texas. Look, Ehlinger's an intriguing prospect, although he's certainly been up and down throughout his career at Texas and not thought of right now as one of the top quarterbacks in this draft. But according to Matt Miller of the Draft Scout, he's got a new throwing motion now. There's a lot of buzz that he could be a breakout at the quarterback position. I'm of the mindset of, the buzz around Sam Ehlinger is much like the buzz around Texas itself, right? Texas is back. No, Texas is not back, and probably Sam Ehlinger will still end up being a day 3 pick, but there's certainly a lot of buzz right now that Ehlinger could be the talk of the Senior Bowl next week. Another quarterback to watch out for, Jamie Newman of Georgia. Now, it says Georgia there, although he did transfer from Wake Forest to Georgia. Wake Forest, where he played all of his snaps. He sat out all of 2020, and so while he could have been a day 1 or 2 type of guy, because he sat out all of 2020, there's not a lot of film on him right now. And you go back to what Kevin Colbert said in an interview with The Ringer earlier this year, where he said, look, they're not going to grade guys who sat out all of 2020 as highly as guys that they'll get film on. So this is going to be a huge week for Jamie Newman to show teams like the Steelers that he still could be that day 1, day 2 type of player. Newman is a guy who's just as good a runner as he is a thrower, and he'll have to show that at the Senior Bowl. The 2 guys on this list that I really want to focus on are Kyle Trask and Mac Jones. These are 2 guys I think the Steelers could easily take at 24 if they have great pre-draft processes, and that's going to start right here at the Senior Bowl. Both guys have the same concerns, which is that, look, they both had fantastic years, but how much of that was a product of the system, right? You talk about Kyle Trask and the Dan Mullen system that he was in. Mullen's done a great job of transforming that Florida team into a national powerhouse again, but Kyle Trask, again, he's part of that system, and throwing to guys like Kyle Pitts and Kadarius Toney does make you wonder, how much can he do outside of structure? Does he have the kind of arm talent that it's going to take at the NFL level? The Senior Bowl, a chance for him to prove that. And those questions are all there, again, for Mac Jones. Now, Jones probably had a more impressive season, but again, this is a guy who's playing with Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle and handing the ball off to Najee Harris. And oh, by the way, he's got one of the best, if not the best, offensive line in the country. So, you're throwing to wide open receivers and you have all day to do it. Again, it's going to be hard for me to see the Steelers at 24 taking a guy who played in such an advantageous position. But both these guys have a chance at the Senior Bowl to make their mark. Moving over to the running back position, the Steelers are going to have to address this at some point in the offseason because they're likely going to lose James Conner to free agency, and they don't really have anyone waiting in the wings right now to take over at that position. Benny Snell's been a real disappointment over the past couple years. Anthony McFarland didn't even get a hat at the end of the year, wasn't even active on the roster at the end of the season. And Jalen Samuels, he provides some value at times, but again, not going to be someone who's going to take over as that every down back. So will the Steelers take a running back early in the draft to be that every down guy? Will they go in free agency and get a guy that they can trust more than a rookie coming in? That remains to be seen, and we'll certainly talk about that as this goes on. But here's 5 guys to look for at the Senior Bowl. Let's start with Michael Carter from North Carolina. Maybe more of a complimentary back. Certainly that's been the knock on him so far. He was that for Javonte Williams at North Carolina, his teammate there at North Carolina. But look, this Michael Carter was just as productive as Javonte Williams. And Javonte Williams is going to be taken, I think, in round 2, maybe even he could be a round 1 type player. And Carter was, as I said, just as productive. The size is the real concern here, just 5'8". Michael Carter, and he's going to have to prove that he can be that every down type of player, because you're not going to take a complimentary guy in those early portions of the draft. So can he be there on third down? Can you trust him in pass protection? He'll certainly be asked to do that during the drills at the Senior Bowl. Chris Evans from Michigan, really intriguing prospect, underrated because of the lack of usage there at Michigan over the last couple years. Look, didn't play at all in 2019 because of academic issues, came back in 2020. Was that Michigan offense is not moving the football, and so he's not going to get a whole lot of touches in that offense. But this is a guy who early on in his college career, very highly thought of. In fact, he was thought of as like guys like Najee Harris early on. When he was a freshman and a sophomore, he was on that level. Fell off because, again, when you're not out there every week, you're just, the buzz around you is going to go away. It certainly has gone away for Chris Evans. He has a chance this week at the Senior Bowl to raise that stock back up and put himself back in contention for maybe even a day 2 type pick. Kylin Hill from Mississippi State, intriguing because, look, we're all going to get enamored with these athletic traits of some of the big running backs in this draft, like a Travis Etienne, the athletic profile of a Travis Etienne. But I think Hill possesses a lot of the skill set that you want from a running back, being that he has good change of direction, good contact balance. He does, though, lack the long speed. I mean, he's not going to be a big play guy. So could he have some middle round value? Can he prove that when he's playing alongside a guy like Michael Carter, who is going to be more of that big play type back? He'll have to prove that at the Senior Bowl next week. Khalil Herbert from Virginia Tech, boy, this guy burst onto the scene this year. Led the nation in all-purpose yards with 1791. My goodness, what a season he had. The questions around him are going to be about pass catching, and was he just a one-year wonder there at Virginia Tech? He's got a chance at the Senior Bowl to prove those doubters wrong. Elijah Mitchell from Louisiana, and I have to put him on here because this is what the Senior Bowl is all about. Get these guys from smaller schools, put them up against top competition, and see how they do. Elijah Mitchell, 3-year starter at Louisiana, extremely productive, a career 6 yards per carry there, but it is a small school. I have some athleticism concerns, talking about the burst that he has. The short area quickness I think is good, but again, I don't know about the initial burst that he has off the line of scrimmage, and I think the contact balance might be lacking there as well, but he's got a chance to prove me wrong at the Senior Bowl. And then let's go over to the wide receiver position. Now, you may think to yourself, Tony, why are you talking about wide receiver in Pittsburgh? They've already got 3 good ones in Chase Claypool, Deonte Johnson, and James Washington, and they may even have enough money to re-sign Juju, depending on what happens with the salary cap. And that may be true, and that may make this point completely moot. But I'm going to go on the assumption that they're not going to re-sign Juju Smith-Schuster. They just won't have the money to do so, and that's going to leave an opening on the roster at the slot receiver position. Look, Chase Claypool and Deonte Johnson are going to be your outside guys, and while I think both guys could be productive from the slot, I'm not sure that the Steelers want to move either guy inside permanently, and that's going to mean that James Washington may have to move inside. But again, I don't know that for a guy like James Washington, who's played the Z receiver, played outside his entire career, I don't know that the best move for him is on the inside. So the Steelers may have to go out and get a slot receiver. So here are some guys to look for at the Senior Bowl. You got Amari Rodgers from Clemson, who was maybe the best slot receiver in the country at Clemson. This is a guy who needs to prove that he's not a product of his surroundings, but nothing about his tape, nothing about his productivity is going to make you think he can't do it. I mean, the only question for him is, can you still get separation without great play design? Looking forward to see him next week. Marquez Stevenson out of Houston. This kid might be a real sleeper here. A slot receiver, also a kick returner, dynamic as a playmaker. Look for him next week. Shi Smith out of South Carolina, maybe my favorite player at the wide receiver position in this group. A tough player. You think about what South Carolina's been able to do, developing guys like Deebo Samuel and Bryan Edwards in the last couple years. Shi Smith, I would not be surprised if Shi Smith is the talk of the Senior Bowl next week. Couple small school guys here. Dwayne Eskridge out of Western Michigan. This kid has a productivity profile that we don't see a lot out of slot receivers. I know he's only 5'9", but my goodness, this is a kid who has dominated at Western Michigan. 33 catches, 768 yards, 8 touchdowns in just 6 games last year. We talk about electric playmakers. Well, Dwayne Eskridge fits that bill to a T. Look, a good week from him could see him rocket up some boards next week. And then Cade Johnson from South Dakota State, another small school. The thing for him, and the story I like here, look, South Dakota State didn't play a football game in 2020. He tried to transfer out, wasn't able to make that happen. He had 1,300 yards, 17 touchdowns in his last year at South Dakota State. He certainly needs a good week here to prove he's still on that level. All right, let's get to the position group you've been waiting for, the offensive line. Yes, this is where I think the Steelers are going to go with the 24th overall pick in the draft. There's a couple different ways they can go, though. They're going to lose Alejandro Villanueva, their left tackle, to free agency. That's likely going to happen. And Marquez Pouncey, their center, is likely to retire. So that's two big holes on the offensive line. Now, center is probably, 24th is probably too early to take a center in the draft, so they're likely, I think, more to lean towards the tackle position. But certainly at the Senior Bowl, they're going to have a bunch of different prospects to choose from. They're going to get a great look at two prospects I think would be more than worthy of the 24th selection between both Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame and Alex Leatherwood from Alabama. Both guys would be great choices. Both guys are left tackles. They can play left tackle. They have done that at big schools against good competition. I think the difference between the two for me right now is that Eichenberg might be more of a sure thing at tackle, whereas Leatherwood, a little more question marks to whether or not he can play tackle at the next level, but he does have the position flexibility to go inside to guard. And so that's something the Steelers value so much. You look at a guy like Matt Filer, a very recent example of a guy who played right tackle for the Steelers. They liked him even better at guard, and so they switched him there. That could happen with Leatherwood very easily. I think if Leatherwood were to be drafted as a left tackle, doesn't work out for him there, they can kick him inside to guard, and he could be potentially your long-term replacement for a guy like David DeCastro. So look for that. Leatherwood provides the position flexibility the Steelers are looking for, but Eichenberg might be more of a sure thing right now at left tackle. Either way, the Steelers are going to get an up-and-close look at these guys at the Senior Bowl. Deonte Brown from Alabama, a monster of a man. I mean, this guy's just gigantic. Now, the Steelers don't have a dying need at guard, and that's what Deonte Brown is. So, look, even if Filer leaves in free agency, they're just going to promote Kevin Dotson to that role. In fact, there's a lot of Steeler fans that would tell you Dotson should have already had that role, should have won out that role at the end of the 2020 season. He was a better run blocker, certainly, than Filer was. And so Dotson, I think, is likely going to be your starter there. Deonte Brown won't come in and start right away if he's drafted, but he's such a mauler in the running game. I think the Steelers are going to love that. And so if they want to draft maybe their replacement for David DeCastro long-term, I think if there's value there in the third or fourth round, maybe they do go with a Deonte Brown. And then remember, the Steelers are going to have a need at center, right? Marquez Pouncey is likely going to retire. Drake Jackson, Creed Humphrey, two of the better center prospects in this draft. So how great is it for the Steelers right now? They have so many needs on the offensive line. They're going to be there in full force at the Senior Bowl, and they're going to get great looks at two great tackle prospects that could be the 24th overall pick. And then you talk about the second or third round, Drake Jackson, Creed Humphrey absolutely could be that guy. You could talk about your next great left tackle and your next great center, and they're both there at the Senior Bowl. All right, and let's finish up here with the cornerback position. Now, much like the wide receiver position, I think this all depends on who they're able to re-sign in free agency. Cam Sutton and Mike Hilton are both free agents. If they re-sign both, then this is a discussion that we don't need to have whatsoever. But I think that's very, very unlikely. I think there's almost no chance the Steelers are able to re-sign both Mike Hilton and Cam Sutton. Cam Sutton could be re-signed. And if he is re-signed and they keep Hayden, I think once again, this might be a discussion not worth having. But I think even if they re-sign Cam Sutton, there's also the chance that Joe Hayden in the final year of his deal is going to have to be a cap casualty because of the cap savings they can find there. And that's going to once again open the door for this cornerback position. So let's leave the door open here. Let's talk about some cornerbacks to watch for at the Senior Bowl. The first one is Rodarius Williams out of Oklahoma State, an outside corner. This would kind of be Justin Lane protection. He reminds me a lot of Justin Lane. He needs to show some ball skills, but this is a guy who could come in and be an outside corner for this team, a kind of outside corner for the future, a Joe Hayden replacement, a Steven Nelson replacement. Look, Justin Lane right now is not highly thought of with that coaching staff. Remember, Justin Lane could not get on the field in that game against the Browns when Hayden couldn't play. Instead, it was James Pierre who got the snaps at outside corner. So I don't think the Steelers right now trust Justin Lane to be a long-term replacement. They may need to go back to the well there to get a future starter at outside corner. Elijah Molden from Washington, I think fits right in with what the Steelers want from their slot corner. He's a day two type of guy right now, could even elevate that at the Senior Bowl. Certainly a slot corner, instinctual player, very good tackler, fits the mold, I think, exactly what the Steelers are looking for. Aaron Robinson, another slot corner, not as highly thought of as Molden. He transferred from Bama to UCF. Got a good click and close, but this is a guy who really struggles in zone defense. He's going to have to prove at the Senior Bowl that he's got the football IQ to play outside of just a man coverage. He's got to prove that he can play within zone. Ambry Thomas, another guy from Michigan, a press corner. Could be, once again, we talk about Rodarius Williams being that Justin Lane protection. I think Ambry Thomas can be that guy as well. And then how about Robert Rochell from Central Arkansas, an incredible athlete, a standout at Central Arkansas, another one of these small school guys who'll have a chance at the Senior Bowl to prove he can do it at the next level. All right, so those are my 25 players to watch for at the Senior Bowl. Of course, there's so many other players that I didn't even get a chance to mention. Najee Harris, by the way, he's going to be at the Senior Bowl, the running back from Alabama. Every Steeler fan would love to see the Steelers take Najee Harris. He will be there, although the reason why he didn't make my list, he has a lingering injury. There's a real concern about whether or not he'll actually be able to participate in any of the drills this week or even in the game. But he did accept his invite, so he will be there. We'll see how much he can get done. We talked about a lot of players today. Now let's go over the top 5 guys I have here, the top player at each position for me. At quarterback, Mac Jones for me is the top guy, and him and Trask are like 1A and 1B. I think Jones has probably impressed me a little more throughout the regular season. Both guys have the same concerns as I talked about, and they need to show that they can do things out of structure and out of that system, and this is a perfect opportunity for them. Look, I'm probably never going to come around to the idea of taking a Mac Jones or Kyle Trask at 24, but they can certainly do a lot to convince me and the Steelers that they are worthy of that pick. Chris Evans at running back. Look, I'm never going to be a guy that wants to take a running back at 24, and I probably don't want to take a running back in the second round either. But Chris Evans can be a value pick in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round that can have just as much productivity as some of the guys that are going to be taken much earlier in this draft. I think he's very underrated, and if he can show out at the Senior Bowl, he could be an extreme value pick in those later rounds. Shi Smith out of South Carolina. This is a slot receiver. I just love the way he plays the game, the physical nature, the pedigree of him coming from South Carolina, the numbers he was able to put up there in that offense. I love his skill set. Look for him to show out at the Senior Bowl as well. Alex Leatherwood, the most intriguing tackle prospect for me, because as I said, I think he has the most question marks about what he can do at tackle. And so this is a chance for him to prove that he can be a solid left tackle at the next level. And again, he also has the position flexibility there to play guard, so he's the more intriguing of the two between him and Eichenberg. And then Molden, this is just such a perfect fit for the Steelers and what they love from him. So, you almost want to see Molden not do well at the Senior Bowl, so he maybe slips a little bit, because I think he might go in the second round, and I'm not sure if the second round is where the Steelers will be targeting a corner. But Molden certainly, for me, my favorite of the cornerback prospects. All right, so Senior Bowl practice starts on Monday. I won't be there, but the guys from the Draft Network will, as will Matt Miller from the Draft Scout, so make sure you check out that content as well. I'll be back with a video after the Senior Bowl to let you know who elevated their draft stock. Thank you all for watching today. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single video, and I'll be back soon with more Steeler Country.